Wait, does this mean that you can like throw some M&Ms in your pocket and snack on it while you're moving? Unfortunately, no, that's not what we're talking about today. Hello and welcome back to the Air Hug Community Podcast. My name is Judy Arizosa and I am your host. And the Air Hug Community Podcast is a community that is all about making the most out of the second half of your life. So on this podcast, we like to talk about things that agitate us, things that can improve our quality of life. We talk about fitness habits, including working out, including thinking processes, and of course, including nutrition. So today we're going to talk about something called movement snacks. And no, I am not talking about something that you eat while you're moving. It's no surprise that we are moving less than ever as a society. In fact, in early 2020, walking decreased by a mean average, are you ready for this, of 27% worldwide. So on the one hand, this surprises me because this was the onset of COVID. And in my little microcosm of a world, as my neighborhood, what I noticed in those first 12 weeks of COVID, of social distancing, was that people in my neighborhood were walking like crazy. In fact, it wasn't unusual for neighbors to be talking about getting like 15,000 steps a day. But anyways, apparently that's not the norm. So according to a study, and I'm not going to do all about studies here, we're going to get some interesting, but I want you to know, that I'm not just talking opinion here. For most of this, I've got some research to back up this topic today. So according to the Annals of Internal Medicine, in a study from November 2020, they examined worldwide changes in step count before and after the announcement of COVID-19 as a pandemic. And what they found, that step counts worldwide were decreased significantly. And they believe that to be from social distancing, lack of commuting, and even lack of shopping, right? We were afraid to go to the grocery store, for crying out loud. So there are limits to this study because all they looked at were smartphones and apps. And also it didn't really take into account things like regional differences. So which, like I was just alluding to, like our neighborhood. But part of the study was to see what the effect of social distancing was on physical activity. And what they found was that it had a big effect on physical activity in the fact that we did a lot less of it, according to this study. Sorry, that was my phone. Because I told someone I could talk, and then I decided to record this podcast. So got to do it when the fire strikes, and I'm passionate about this right this minute, so that's why we're here. Anyways, we do know the benefits of sustained exercise, right, are awesome, and we should always aspire to make that part of our consistent habits. But in one study, young adults were told to climb, young sedentary adults, let me make sure I make that point, told to climb 3 flights of stairs 3 times per week. And then in addition to whatever regular activities they did, and remember these were sedentary people, well, what they found was that their oxygen uptake improved modestly. So they're seeing a modest improvement here. So how are we going to think about this? Well, let's talk about another study. Another study of 44,000 people, which was a meta-analysis, means it was a study of several studies. And in this case, it was a review of 9 studies from 4 different countries. And this study concluded that higher sedentary time was associated with higher mortality. So instead of looking at the steps per day, they actually looked at the amount of time that people spent being sedentary. So My question is this: is it steps per day or hours of inactivity that we should be more concerned about? Right? I'm thinking it's more hours of inactivity. So let's put this another way. Is a person who trains, let's say somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 3 to 7 days a week, but has a high number of sedentary hours in their day, really improving their odds for longevity? I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect the answer is no, because they're not really moving throughout the day based on that meta-analysis study of 44,000 people. So let's cue up the term movement snacks. And as I alluded to before, this has nothing to do with food, but what these are, and I didn't invent this term, by the way, they are snack-sized movements. For example, taking a break and doing 3 flights of stairs, or going for a mini walk of 10 minutes of nonstop walking. Set a timer for 5 minutes, walk out the door, walk for 5 minutes straight, turn around and come back to wherever you are, whether you're at work or home, etc. Here's another one, another example. If you tend to be sedentary and you can do this, just do a round of 10 push-ups, 10 squats, and march in place for 30 seconds. Now you've broken up your time of being inactive, right? So these little movement snacks can actually minimize, right, the time we spent being sedentary in our day. So another obvious one, which we've heard about for years, includes parking far away when you're parking somewhere and going to do errands or going to work or whatever it is you're doing. Or let's say you're going to do some airplane travel. Get to the airport early and plan on doing 10 minutes of walking before it's time to board your flight. By the way, I love when I fly out of JFK from our little town here in Rochester, because the gate for Rochester at JFK and Terminal 4 is always gate like 52. It's always gate somewhere like 48 to 50 something. And can I tell you, it's a 20-minute walk after you get off the plane at JFK to get to the front door to exit. So I love that. That's a built-in 20-minute walk in that you hadn't really planned on. But anyways, here's ways that we don't want to use movement snacks, okay? Because they're meant to be in addition to, not in place of. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about thinking of using movement snacks as your only form of exercise, okay? If you're trying to reshape your body, you need to include regular workouts. But you also can benefit from, and it is highly recommended that you do make movement snacks a part of your day. So I think there are some articles out there that I've looked at online that talk about, like, you don't really have to work out. You can just do a bunch of these little snacks. Well, I'll tell you what, these movement snacks, you can do that. But if reshaping your body, if you're trying to get your body into a specific shape that you highly desire, you're going to have to do more than that. But it's totally up to you. I mean, if you just want to live a long time and don't really care the shape of your body, yes, you can do that. But here's another thing is, don't consider these movement snacks to be your cardio. Again, I think this is in terms of fitness in general. Effective cardio, and here's the word I'm emphasizing here, effective cardio, means that you're doing 30-ish minutes of sustained activity where your heart rate is moderately elevated. And you can look up charts online all over the place for elevated heart rates. In finding the zone is what I'm talking about that actually works for you. So you need to get at least into a moderate heart rate zone. Or if you're going to do something like sprints or interval work, then it can be 20-ish workouts. Oopsie, not 20-ish workouts, but 20-ish minutes. Where you actually have an extremely elevated heart rate. And when you're doing full-out high-intensity sprints or intervals, even though you're resting for a certain period of time, that resting doesn't drop your heart rate all the way down to that low zone for very long, if it even drops there at all. So that's what we're talking about here. So if you are trying to reshape your body, by all means, please include movement snacks as part of your activities of daily living, like what I mentioned before. Grab 3 flights of stairs, grab a set of push-ups, a set of squats, and march in place for 30 seconds. Park far away. Go for those 10-minute walks, because that's actually going to keep you active throughout the day and prevent that sedentary part. But there's 3 things you need to do if you want to reshape your body, and this is not anything new, but I think this is a great time to bring it up since we're kind of on this topic, right? Number 1 is to prioritize adequate nutrition, and that does not mean that you're working out like crazy and severely cutting your calories. That does not work. I know everyone says to exercise more and eat less, but that model actually long-term doesn't work, and it usually leads to overeating because you are so hungry from the hard workouts. Okay, number 2 is to resistance train 2 to 5 days per week, making sure that you prioritize the 6 movement patterns being trained twice per week. So if you're doing 2 workouts a week, you want to do total body. And if you're doing somewhere in between, you can work with someone to help create a program. FYI, that's what I do for midlife women, that gets those movement patterns in. And a quick review, what are those movement patterns? They are squats, hinges, which is all forms of hip thrusts and deadlifts, push moves, pull moves, carry moves, and lunges or single-sided lower body moves. All of those things, ideally, you want to train twice per week if your goal is to reshape your body. So, I want to make a little comment about conditioning workouts, which are things that I consider to be high rep, moderate weight workouts, such as a circuit or a kettlebell complex, where your heart rate does get up and you have shorter rests and it doesn't really go down all the way during the course of the workout. So this can also be an effective cardio type of workout where, depending on where your heart rate is, whether you go for 20 or 30 minutes. We do circuits in our gym here periodically. In fact, we just did one today where the girls were working for 30 minutes overall, but their rests were kept to specific intervals. And so they had work intervals and rest intervals, and they kept moving the whole time. So that really could have been considered for them a conditioning workout, which included their cardio for the day, but they were also able to get in their resistance training. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I'd like to talk to you next week about trusting the process, because I know in this hurry-up world, we all want results like yesterday. And this is, a question that I get in the gym like every week. Like, why isn't this working? I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. I know it's frustrating, but the older we get, the harder it is to get quick results. And quick results normally don't last anyways. So slow and steady wins the race. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. I appreciate your listening, and if you would do me a big favor, leave a review on the podcast platform of which you are listening, because reviews are the lifeblood of podcasts, and it means so much to me to get this midlife community message out there to anyone who really wants to know about it. All right, ta-ta for now. See you next Tuesday.